bisa bahasa Jawa? Senang siang. Siapa bisa bahasa Jawa? Saya bisa bahasa Jawa, tapi harus pakai IDE. Ya. So yeah, terima kasih banyak atas kesempatan. I was asked to speak in English today, so I will change around in English as well as in Indonesian. Many of my slides are in Indonesian, and then actually if you have any questions during the presentation, yeah, silakan ngomong bahasa Indonesia. Saya juga oke bahasa Indonesia. Asal bahasa Jawa nggak dibantu. Itu agak tricky. So yeah, thank you so much. Today I'm going to share a little bit about 3 lessons, mostly related to entrepreneurship and digital product development. So digital product development means what, right? It means UI, UX, of course coding. For most of us, the technology part is the easiest part, right? So I'm going to share more about the other things that we should be thinking about. Yes, but I've done a few startups. Some have been successful, some have not been. And most of them have actually been in Indonesia, yeah. So I'll start with a little bit of a background on who I am, but before that, feel free to email me. Here's my Twitter, and here's my handphone, yeah. And kayaknya the last slide, there's information is there again. So any questions, any comments, whatever, please feel free to contact me again. Yeah. So first thing, I'm American, yeah. Saya asal dari situ, saya lahir di situ. Tapi bapak saya insinyur, jadi saya waktu kecil saya sering pindah-pindah. Saya lama di Taiwan, saya lama di Singapore, saya lama di Hong Kong. So I actually grew up in Asia. But then I went to college in New York City, to Columbia. And waktu in Columbia, maaf ini is a little small ya. Tapi saya ambil jurusan politik waktu itu. My brother also, jurusan politik. Some languages, Middle Eastern languages also. Tapi I was always very captivated with technology. So this was actually 1999, 2000. So all of you guys, this is before your time, but that was the first internet bubble. So kita kan sering baca di TechCrunch atau apa, oh, it's like a bubble again. So they're referring to the first bubble. And that was 1999, 2000. And Columbia, as many of you might know, is in New York City, right? So New York City is a real hub for entrepreneurship. Very much like Silicon Valley also. So, you can just imagine it. There were so many smart people doing incredible projects, incredible companies. And I looked at all this and I said, even though I'm studying politics, I want to be involved. This is something I want to do. So I started doing, code, Malahari. I did a lot of freelance HTML. And this was before Ruby on Rails, right? This is like Perl was still popular. So that's my background. After I graduated from Columbia, politics in the US, if you study politics, you normally go to law school. Jadi biasanya kita menjadi pengacara. Ya. Di Indonesia, kita ambil sarjana hukum ya, S1 ya. In the US, it's different. There's no S1 for hukum. You're only S2. So most people who become pengacara in the US, they study politics or philosophy undergrad. So I was going to become a lawyer. And then I got this incredible opportunity from Stanford. So they sent me to Flores. Who's been to Flores here? Anybody been to NTT? No? No one? Seriously? Maksudnya gue satu-satu orang di ruangan sini yang pernah lama di Flores. Okay. So long story short, gue dapat scholarship from Stanford. And Stanford wanted to send me to China. And of course, this is like 2003. China kan lagi booming kan, semua orang tahu ekonomi China lagi great. It's crazy. Tapi at the last moment, the Indonesia program director called me and said, Stanford will send you to China on this scholarship, but I'd like to offer you the opportunity to come to Indonesia instead. And I said, wow, Indonesia, nice. What is it? It's close to Bali, yeah? Joking. Basically, Stanford sent me to work with an NGO. Everybody knows what an NGO is? LSM. It's like, do you know Indonesia Mengajar? It's like Anies Baswedan. So I was in a program similar. So I was like guru di tempat yang terpencil sekali di Flores. Yeah. So then after that, I did a couple cool things. I worked in banking and finance for a while in Jakarta sama Singapore. And then I started a few startups. So this begins our startup journey. So in 2011, I was working at a finance firm, and I looked at the startup scene in Indonesia, I looked at the growth of mobile, the growth of internet, right? And I was like, I think now is the time to do something. Yeah. So if you think about this, this was like 2011 ya. Jakarta baru diumumkan sebagai ibu kota Facebook, right? TechCrunch kirim Sarah Lacy ke sini, and dia tulis article, what the hell is going on in Indonesia, right? So I was looking at this, Corporal happened around that at that time. So I decided to leave my finance firm and start. So I started a company called Harpoon. Yeah, and this was, I'll show you a little video later. But Harpoon was a mobile app, and it was about digital graffiti. Jadi kita bisa bagaikan tembok-tembok di sekitar kita berbicara. So konsepnya meninggalkan jejak ya, di dunia dunia. So I did this for about a year. Untungnya Harpoon juga very lucky, we got banyak penghargaan, like Digital Innovation Awards, a few from Technasia, which I'm very thankful to you guys for. And then I did another one called Maapier. The problem with Harpoon was it was hard to monetize. Yeah. Who knows what monetization means? Or rather, raise your hand if you don't know what I mean. So this is something I'll talk about a little bit later, and if you take the advice of Technasia Tadi and you want to become an entrepreneur, you need to think not only about coding, right? As I said before, for many of us, the technical part is the most easy part. You also need to think about things like product design, how do you get users, and you need to think about monetization, which means how you sell your service, right? So Harpoon was actually pretty hard to monetize. So Maapier was an extension of Harpoon that we thought we could monetize. And we were quite successful at that. And then I had the opportunity to start Jekadia. So this is funny, talking about monetization. I will read it out the bottom. It says, I call my innovation the wheel, but so far I cannot find any venture capital. Is the joke lost on you guys? He invented a wheel and he's trying to get investors, but the wheel is square. I see a lot of startups doing this, and I've done this as well. And I'm going to share with you guys a couple strategies how to avoid doing this. So if you come out of Binus and you want to start a startup, you don't want to go work for McKinsey or BCG, or you don't want to go work for a bank, and all of that is fine. You know, I worked for banks, all that's fine. You know, but if you're thinking in your mind, no, aku mau sendiri, right? Aku mau apa namanya menjadi wira swasta. You need to be thinking about this, right? So in my opinion, there are two types of digital software companies. Raise your hand if you don't know who that guy is. Who knows who that guy is? Who is he? Bill Gates, right? Bill Temple. Who knows how Microsoft started? Who knows what was Microsoft's first product? And Microsoft's got on, it's crazy, right? I mean, there's like 200,000 employees, every country in the world, like tens of billions of dollars in revenue, right? But what was Microsoft's first product? Raise your hand if you know. What was Microsoft's first product? That's right, they created an interpreter for BASIC. So this was before C, and this was for the Altair machine. So this was before personal computers. And very few people were using personal computers, right? It was mostly mainframes. And they created an interpreter for BASIC. The addressable market size was probably only a couple thousand people, right? So if you were a venture capitalist looking at them, you would never think at the start, and we're talking about Microsoft, right? That these guys would end up becoming Microsoft, right? But they picked a market, they understood that market really well, they solved somebody's actual problem, and then Microsoft went on and on and on, right? If anybody knows Y Combinator, anybody ever heard of Y Combinator? Y Combinator? So this is important, right? In the era now of online and everything, we all have access to way more information, right, than many people had, definitely than Bill had back in the day. So Y Combinator is a incubator in Silicon Valley. Some of their companies include Dropbox, Airbnb, and these guys write a lot, right? So if you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, you should read what these guys say. And a lot of them say, you have to find your basic interpreter for Altair, right? stop me if I'm speaking too fast or you want me to switch to Bahasa. But the point is, right, you need to start somewhere, and that somewhere can be either solving a real problem and monetizing, or it can be creating something magical. Magical like a unicorn. Who thinks they know an example of a magical company? And when I mean magical, I mean a company that shouldn't really exist. But they do, because it's magic. Who can think of one? There's no right or wrong answer. Who can think of a magical company that improbably still exists? YouTube. YouTube's a good example. I would actually say YouTube is more over here, because YouTube actually solves a problem, but I accept that, that's good. Anyone else? How about Pinterest? Who uses Pinterest here? Okay, everybody who has a Pinterest account, raise your hand. Okay, quite a few. Keep your hand up if you use Pinterest every single day. Anybody use Pinterest every single day? No, okay. Yet there are people who are, and now Pinterest's valuation is like $10 billion. It's crazy. Pinterest is something magical, right? Pinterest shouldn't really exist, but it does. Raise your hand again if you could build Pinterest in one night on Ruby on Rails. Raise your hand if you know Ruby and you could build Pinterest in one night. I'm pretty sure most of us could. Really? Nobody knows Ruby here? No? Anyway, my point is that building Pinterest, it's a sliding slideshow. It's not that difficult. And in fact, there are modules out there on the web that we can download. They're called like 1 month Rails, and it will teach you to build Pinterest in 1 month. Somebody with zero computer science experience. So my point really is, you have two choices, right? You can go start a company that can actually solve a real problem for somebody, create an interpreter for Altair enthusiasts in BASIC, right, for instance. Or, let's think of an example. What's something that really bugs you in your day-to-day life? What's something that really annoys you? What's something that you said, I wish somebody would solve that for me? I tell you what bugs me. Every time you go to the store and you pakai your kartu ATM, kan ada banyak banget mesin EDC, banyak banget. Ya, dan pasti yang cocok dengan kartu yang kita punya mati. Ya, jadi mbak-mbak minta, oh maaf, ada kartu lain, soalnya ini isinya rusak. That bugs me, right? That's a problem that should be solved, and somebody will solve that, and somebody will make a lot of money. And that company in the U.S. is called Square, right? So that's an example. So you can solve a real problem, or you can create something magical. And I am sorry to say that. Harpoon was actually quite magical, and I'll show you why a little bit. Okay, so in the interest of moving forward, assuming you want to be an entrepreneur, right? I'm going to give you some tips on how to make that hopefully easier, right? And Binus, by the way, is a great school, and you guys have great facilities, great internship programs. You have all the tools at your hands to be successful, right? So here's what's going to happen, right? This is crazy failure. These are people who raise a lot of venture capital funding and then they fail. Extraordinarily fail, right? Who knows Fab.com? Anybody heard of Fab? Fab raised a bunch of money, they had a bunch of smart people, and then they failed extraordinarily, right? This is crazy success. This is the distribution curve. You want to be somewhere here, right? You want to pick a problem, you want to solve that problem, you want to do it smarter than anyone else. And that's where you want to be. Right? There will be lots of people here, and lots of people here will start little small companies, like Harpoon, that I'll share with you a little bit more later. And most of these companies will die because of suicide, not homicide. What that means is they will kill themselves because they don't get to product market fit, they don't figure out what their market is, they can't sell their product, they don't get enough users, right? The team themselves are friends from college, and eventually they can't decide on who's going to do what, so one goes this way, one goes that way, right? There will be lots of little companies who fail like that. So, where are we? So the formula for success, before I relate to you more specific things. And of course there is no real formula for success. This is only my opinion, yeah? Ini cuma pendapat saya, yeah? So being prepared is the same thing as being lucky, right? I was talking this with Toby. Where's Jonathan Toby?
Wow.
Where's Toby? I was talking about this with Toby before, and he was talking about, aduh, ada yang banyak yang hoki ya. Yeah, like this company sangat hoki ya. So what is hoki, right? Hoki is lucky, right? Right? So how do you be lucky, right? Whoever is hoki, like that's what I want, right? Aku juga mau hoki, right? How do I get that? So I think some things to think about is you need to have great timing, right? Who in the audience likes robotics? Who likes robots? Anyone? Or there's a lot of robot enthusiasts and nobody's gonna admit to it? Robots are cool, right? And the future of this world is gonna be robots in the factory and algorithms in the office, all right? But what if I said to you now is the time to start a robot company in Indonesia? I don't think the timing is great yet. Maybe another 10 years. So you need to have great timing. You need to pick the timing that is right for your sector. Whether that's robotics, artificial intelligence, payment system, consumer internet, photos, online banking, travel, hotels, food, mobile, right? Security, cryptography, that's a big one, right? That's probably one that's right time now. So you need to have the right timing. You need to pick whatever you're going to do, and it has to be the actual right time. Anybody have any questions? I'm American, so it's very back and forth, yeah. Just stop me and raise your hand if you have any questions. If not, we'll do some questions afterwards, right? So the second thing is you need to have good connections, right? After you have the right timing, you pick the right problem. Maybe it's not magical, maybe it's like basic for Altair and you want to solve this, right? You need to have good connections. So the number one thing you need to do is you need to go find mentors. Nah, untuk banyak sekali yang udah sukses, yang udah berjuara dari titik nol kan. Just look around you, go to any Tech in Asia event, banyak banget. You need to go get close to people who've been successful, and unfortunately I'm not one of them. You need to go find people who've had real quantifiable success and get close to them. Because they know, right? They know what you're gonna face, right? In the future. Secondly, you need to read. You need to read a lot. Nah, sekarang ada Y Combinator, ada Tech in Asia, ada TechCrunch, ada banyak banget, right? There's so much information out there that you can read, right? You should be reading books also. You should be reading Paul Graham's books, right? You should be reading Jessica Livingston's books. You should be reading about Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle. You should be reading about Microsoft founders. You should be reading the book about how the Twitter founders got started. You should read a lot. And then you need experiences. So this is the best possible time, right? Because you guys are now all in college. It's the best possible time for you to experiment and to try things, right? Do it cheap, do it fast, and just experiment. And then the last one I'd say is you need adequate resources. When you actually start off, right, you need good people and you need adequate money, right? Because it costs money to rent an office, to have a telephone. You need to pay an enterprise subscription on GitHub. You probably need Office 365, right? You need all these things that cost money. So these are the three things that you need to have, but all of them don't make sense unless you have a great product in the right market. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Anyone have any questions, or should I just keep going? Raise your hand. Everyone good? What day is it? Monday? Feels like Monday, no? Let's keep on going. Okay, so here's my product story. I talked a lot about what I think you guys should do, or any advice to anyone. So here's my particular story, because you're probably saying, ini siapa sih yang ngomong gitu kan? So here's my product story. Ini adalah kuil Dendur, dan dia merupakan semacam kayak apa ya, semacam candi kuno. Dia di Museum Metropolitan in New York City. Yeah. So it's ancient Egyptian dari Mesir yang kuno dan menarik sekali. Kalau kita mendekati, tentu saja ada hieroglif dari Mesir kuno, tapi juga ada coretan-coretan. Dan ternyata ya yang ini dari apa namanya Mesir kuno, ini ribuan tahun yang lalu dibuatkan, ribuan tahun yang lalu. Nah yang ini ya 1820, ini lebih recent ya. Nah ini coretan yang pernah ditinggalkan sama tentara Napoleon. Ya. Jadi maksudnya orang-orang yang kunjung ke situ ribuan tahun setelah dibuat pertama udah meninggalkan jejak mereka di situ. Jadi mereka coret-coret. Ini Goa Lascaux, ini di Prancis. Apa namanya, orang prasejarah, mereka udah apa namanya kasih lukisan atau apa, ada kurbo, ada apa ya. Jadi mereka apa namanya meninggalkan jejak di situ untuk menyampaikan kepada orang yang belum datang ke sana, right, about who these people are, what their stories. Everyone knows this, right? There's nobody in the world who doesn't understand what this means, right? Jadi si David sama April, mereka meninggalkan jejak di sini, right? So what is all this stuff, right? Meninggalkan jejak, tinggal coret, Mesir kuno. What is JP talking about? Who is this guy, right? This is all a concept that I call social mapping, right? So if we leave campus tonight, kan macet di jalan tol, kita buka apa? Kita buka Waze, right? Atau kita buka Google Maps, right? Nah di situ di peta ada informasi apa? Ada informasi kemacetan atau apa. But there's one map, right? How many versions of Waze are there? There's only one version of Waze. What I open and you open is the same map, right? Social mapping to us was a different concept. It was saying there's more than one map. There's many maps. Tergantung kalau lo David sama April atau siapa. Tergantung lo mau makan bakso atau lo mau apa, right? There's different maps, and this concept was social mapping. Sorry. Social mapping. So we created an app called Harpoon that was on iOS and Android that did this, basically. And I'll show you a quick little video. Tapi there were three main features. Lo bisa meninggalkan jejak di mana saja. Persis kayak kita coret di dinding atau David dan April, apa namanya, inside of the tree. Habis itu kita ninggalkan, ini agak gelap sih. Tapi basically kalau kita ninggalin, it's tied to a physical place. Jadi kalau kita mendekati, kita mendekati. Kalau kita menjauh, kita menjauh, kan? So we leave specific messages in the real world. Dan yang ketiga, kita bisa nge-store atau simpan beberapa keyword tertentu. Jadi ini contoh ayam ya, ayam apa? Jadi ini ayam tutu. Jadi kalau kita mendekati sama ayam tutu nanti, right? The world tells us, oh, you're around ayam tutu. Karena kita udah simpan ayam tutu sebagai keyword, right? If we save coffee, ya, pecinta kopi or something, then kalau kita mendekati coffee bar, we're around it. So this was the concept of Harpoon. And I'm going to show you a very quick video. Yeah, 1 second.
Ini hari aku telah menginjak langit bumi Jakarta. Sudah hampir 4 tahun lamanya. Saya tidak tahu.
Okay, so itu sedikit video yang iseng-iseng, tapi namanya Suara Merdeka. Jadi we were captivated with the idea kalau kita kunjungi ke Istana Merdeka, what has happened here? Ya, sejak zaman Bung Karno dan sebelumnya dan setelahnya, what has happened here? Ya, jadi kita meninggalkan jejak di Istana Merdeka. Ya. So this was Harpoon. This was the concept. Social mapping, kita bagaikan tembok di sekeliling kita berbicara, telling us the stories of ada apa yang telah terjadi di sini. Ya. So Harpoon was pretty cool, dan kita dapat penghargaan di World Summit Awards Mobile. Jadi ini saya sama satu co-founder saya, Agatha, orang Indonesia, di World Summit Award Mobile. Habis kami dapat penghargaan ini di Abu Dhabi, di UAE, Abu Dhabi. Dan kami dapat ini Global Champion in Mobile Content for Tourism. Yeah. So we were, wow, like this is really good, really good. Dan kami satu-satu perusahaan yang mewakili Indonesia di acara itu. And then salah satu yang menghargai kami adalah ini dia pendiri Rovio, dan Rovio milik Angry Birds. So cool, right? Kita juga habis bertahun-tahun kerjain Harpoon, udah rasa, kita dapat penghargaan ini ya. Habis itu kita balik ke Jakarta. Dan kita diundang ke banyak sekali perkumpulan atau segala macam untuk share our product story about Harpoon, right? But what we realized after all this innovation and after all this coding, right? And after all these focus groups and design and UI and user experience and making videos, right? We realized Harpoon kan susah banget untuk monetize, right? Kembali ke tadi, what is monetization? How do you sell your service, right? Jadi kita diajak sama banyak sekali advertising agencies, maybe some names you know, like OLV, WPP, VML. Jadi saya dikasih kesempatan untuk berikan presentasi kepada brands, Nike, Adidas, all these brands, right? And I try to convince them, saya coba meyakinkan mereka bahwa their brand has an interesting story. And they should be using social mapping to tell their story, right? And they said, wow, you know, that's really interesting. But I wish you had this, and this. In other words, our clients were asking for things that we hadn't built. And why hadn't we built them? Because we weren't talking to our clients in the first place, right? What was Microsoft's first product? A basic interpreter for Altair. They knew who their clients were. They knew who would pay money for this service. Harpoon was very cool, and it was a unique concept. And we won some awards, but our customers didn't want to pay for it. And that right there is a problem. And I'm going to share some 3 tips with you later, right? So we came back to Jakarta, and we said, okay, ada sebagian dari Harpoon yang bisa diselamatkan. Karena kita bisa menggunakan core engine, the core technology, the core code, the core interface, untuk membuat sesuatu that somebody else will pay us for. All these brands, all these agencies, right? Nah itu Mapiari. So Mapiari, sorry, saya nggak tunjukin video Mapiari karena nanti kita mau nonton video lain ya. Tapi Mapiari kurang lebih seperti Pinterest for maps. Jadi konsep sama dengan Harpoon. Kita meninggalkan jejak, kita buka peta, dan kita taruh content inside. And then these maps can be embedded everywhere on the web, just like you embed a YouTube video. So it was cool. We did ini CNN. Ada juga New York Times content. Jadi kalau kita scroll dia up, it was quite cool, right? And in the end, it was so hard. It was so hard. So I go back to my original slide, Harpoon, Mapiari, dan sekarang cek aja. So while doing this, I was approached by a couple venture capitalists who said, why don't you build a basic for Altair? Why don't you solve a real problem? So what I'm doing now is something called cek aja. I believe Cek Aja solves a real problem. And what Cek Aja is adalah, and I'll show you a video supaya lebih jelas ya. Tapi Cek Aja adalah penyedia jasa perbandingan online untuk produk perbankan dan asuransi. So di sini agak gelap, tapi di sini ada sedikit arrow ya. Untuk bank sama asuransi sekarang untuk mengakuisisi nasabah mereka susah sekali. Ya, siapa pernah mengajukan formulir kartu kredit atau asuransi kesehatan? I know you guys are young, but has anybody ever done these things on your own? No? In Indonesia susah banget. Itu berdasarkan kertas. Jadi kita harus ngisi kertas, nanti harus ngantri ke cabang. Ya kan cabang tutup like jam 2:30 sore, 3:30 siang, susah, right? Yeah. Jadi we make this electronic, just like Traveloka makes. Ya bersama dengan Traveloka, belum nggak usah kunjungi ke travel agent, right? Tinggal buka www.traveloka, beres. Sama dengan Cek Aja. Jadi untuk nasabah itu efisien, transparan, dan cepat. Dia online, dia juga di tablet. Yeah. So I'll show you a little video with a demo. Tapi high level sih, kami bisa mengunjungi dari beberapa produk, bisa di home screen, bisa menginput data sendiri, lalu kami bisa browsing dan melihat penawaran dari bank atau asuransi yang terkait.